This is Maureen Kafkas, the Brain BS coach, here to tell you about the episode today. In this episode, I speak with intuitive human design expert Kathy Bochonko about her personal human design journey. She shares what brought her to it and why she had to make some tweaks to how she approached it because she was initially using it in a restrictive way. She also shares tons of knowledge about human design and how it's so beneficial for our navigating our relationships, especially the one that we have with ourselves and learning to love ourselves and trust ourselves with the decisions we make on a daily basis. It's a great episode. You're going to love it. I do want to suggest that maybe you go back and listen to episode 126 of the Brain BS podcast, which is Human Design with Taylor V, where we introduce the basics of human design. That might be a beneficial foundation for you listening to this episode, but it's not absolutely necessary. Either way, you're going to love it. So here we go. Sit back, settle in. Episode 146 of the Brain BS podcast, Intuitive Human Design with Kathy Bochonko. Do you want more out of your life, but not exactly sure what that might be? Are you longing for something, but can't quite put your finger on what it is? That is the universe speaking to you, and it is time to listen up. I'm your host, Maureen Kafkas, the Brain BS coach. I created the Brain BS podcast to help people define what success means to them and show them how to get it. I help you to let go of fear and doubt and prepare your nervous system for success. I show you how to understand your own energy and to trust yourself to make all the decisions. If you are ready to go inward and stop looking outside yourself for all the answers, this is the podcast for you. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Brain BS podcast. I have my friend here today, Kathy Bochonko, and I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell you what she wants you to know about her.
Hi there. I am a 6'2" emotional projector. We're going to talk about human design today. So I will just clarify with the way I always like to start out is to tell people my type, and I am emotional authority. So I met Maureen at a human design conference, and since I have known her, I have launched my mentoring business. I'm a human design analyst and mentor, and I really like helping people to find their true voice and see who they came here to be.
Awesome. Okay. Yep. Kathy and I met at the Human Design Conference last year. It's the first human design thing I've ever done. And it's also, I haven't really done anything else too much around it because that's not really what my expertise is. Mine is to figure out how to live my life consciously, and human design is a part of it, but it's not as big a part of it as it is for some other people that are in human design. So the reason why I invited Kathy on today is because I want to invite people on the podcast to share their own human design journey, like sort of like where they started with it, where they are now, and like maybe what they think their gift is related to it, or some of the gifts that they've received from that. And then I'm going to let her tell you about how she works with people with human design, because I want you to be able to consider her as a resource, because it is really a lot of information. And sometimes it's really helpful to have someone help us, especially at the beginning of human design, to get a little bit of information. So, okay. So why don't you start with us then, Kathy, about like what led you to wanting to learn about human design?
Well, when I first heard about human design, my sister told me about it, and she was what I call a lot more woo-woo than I was. And it sounded really interesting when I heard about myself being a projector, and there's a plane, I'm sorry. It resonated, but then I went down a bunch of rabbit holes, as projectors like to do, and started to read a bunch of stuff that I was like, this is some wacky stuff. And I kind of left it, but I actually had a really pure experiment because of it, because I let it just kind of be in the background, where I would see something would happen, and I would go, yeah, because you didn't wait for the invitation, which is what projectors are supposed to do, if your audience doesn't know. And stuff like that. But then a couple years later, I really got interested because of some things that was happening with my daughter, and I learned about her design. And then I went so deep down every rabbit hole, and I started living the experiment in my head instead of embodying it. And I think that's a common thing that people do. But I spent a couple years really just learning everything. And you know, priding myself on being able to spout this, that, or the other thing about it, but really not seeing how it's really meant to work. And then when I finally like got out of my head and got back into my body and really started to see the gifts of what it was telling me about myself in a way that allowed me to really express who I came here to be, it was like, I feel like, there was a time about, I don't know, maybe 9 months ago where all of a sudden, boom, like life just became magical. So I'm just here to help people find their magic now.
Yeah, well, so that's funny because when we were at the conference, you were like a walking encyclopedia and knew everything. And I was impressed that you had all that knowledge. But I also like did not have that knowledge. So and when I first met with you and you did a reading with me, afterwards you remembered things about my chart that I didn't even remember. Like you really do have an amazing ability to retain the information about the human design charts. And so it's not surprising maybe that it could go into your head since you're so good at that. But you literally can see a difference in you since you started embodying it in your body and not just like, because would you agree that it's very restrictive when we just do it in our head?
Yes, it becomes another label and another box that we put ourselves in that can be limiting. But see, part of my design is I have a totally open ajna, and the shadow aspect of that is to feel this need to be certain. And so, as a projector who's wanting recognition, and this open ajna needing to be certain, I was always trying to prove to you that I knew enough, not just to you, to everybody, to myself mainly. And so that becomes super annoying, especially as projectors. We have this like probing, penetrating, deep, intimate aura, right? And people would be like, "Get out of here with your knowledge. It's annoying. It's getting into my aura, and I didn't ask for it." Right?
Yeah, yeah. So what do you think it was that inspired you to get out of your head and into your heart and body with your human design experiment?
It cracked me open. I mean, a lot of times, the universe will keep gently trying to love us into accepting who we are. And when we don't listen, it just starts hitting us harder and harder. And I literally woke up one morning and I heard in my head, "You are choosing to die by not living your life." And I knew I was just spending all my time trying to learn and intellectualizing everything and thinking if I knew the answers, then I'd be happy. And I was just drawing in all this like melancholy, the bitterness, the projector bitterness, right? I bought into the whole idea that, for those who don't know, who are listening, the strategy of the projector is that our energy needs to be recognized by the other and invited so that we're not getting into people's aura in this icky way, right? So that makes us, a lot of people feel like, oh, I just have to wait until someone sees that I can help them. And sometimes we get really frustrated because we can't. And what I realized was, no, I've got to start seeing my value and recognizing it and owning my own um joy and magic. And that meant, and it really was just because I just got too miserable and I had had enough knowledge to know that the answers were inside of me. And I did a lot of work with I have a sister who does a lot of removing of blocks and that sort of stuff. So it's just the perfect, everything just happened the way it's supposed to happen for me. And when it did, there astrologically things happen. I went through my second Saturn return, which my Saturn gates are about telling a better story about who you are. So I was telling this story that limited me, right? I was limited by my own narrative of myself. And when I started telling a bigger story about myself and believing that I could do what I wanted to do and that nobody was keeping me in any kind of box, not being a projector, not my husband, not wanting me to do this or that or the other thing, when I took all of that away and I empowered myself through my own voice, which I am here to speak from my sense of self. That is one of my channels is the channel that connects the identity center to the throat through the channel of creative inspiration. And so I wasn't doing that, right? That has to be invited, it has to be asked for, but I wasn't doing it with myself. I wasn't inspiring myself. So, it just starts with, we're all here to learn how to love ourselves. And the way we learn it best is through our relationships, as you've talked about before.
Mm-hmm.
So when our relationship is giving us frustration or anger or whatever, that's really just a way for it's showing us what we haven't healed yet in ourselves. So when I stopped blaming the things outside of myself and empowering myself, it just, I mean, everything shifted.
Yeah, and then from the outside looking in at you,
Mm.
that's also when you had been stuck in that place, but it also coincided with you starting to take action. So do
Yes,
you think that this is my question for you? Do you think that taking the action is what made the shift, or do you think the shift happened first and that's why you took the action?
that's a great question. And I would say that it's like the chicken and the egg, right? Um,
Yeah.
I want to say that I had to have the shift, but if I hadn't taken the action, the shift would have stalled. So I had to keep the momentum going. And what I kept telling myself is I really had to keep myself in this positive momentum phase, and that not to be confused with toxic positivity. I just had to, whatever I was feeling, I would ask the universe, what is this here to teach me? And then not think about it, but just show me what this is here to teach me. And then when I would see any glimpse of something that was teaching me something from whatever negative I might be starting to feel in that moment, because I'm emotional. So my moods go up and down, right? I have the individual emotional wave has a lot of melancholy in it. So when I'd start to feel that melancholy, instead of fighting it or trying to fix it, I would think, okay, what's this here to show me? What am I meant to learn for this? And then I'd just like kind of let it go. And that would allow me to, to not be in resistance and just have things happen. And so, like with my business, when I started Momentum, when there were times where, like, for example, I just had a wonderful 10 days in Florida with my husband. That was really magical. And right before I was going, I was like, oh, business is really slow. I just had a couple of clients I'd been working with long term who stopped for various reasons that made sense, that they needed a break. They'd worked with me for several months. And I had like a big opening in this time. And then I was like, well, I'm going on vacation, so it's good timing. And honestly, even the couple appointments I had, stuff came up where they got shifted for whatever reasons. And it was like, yeah, because I was meant to be fully present in that vacation mode in that moment. So when you really, really start to embrace the idea that life isn't happening to us, it's happening for us, even the stuff that feels really screwed up has something in it that we might not like the package, but it's something we needed. It might be a bitter pill we had to swallow, but it's for our highest good. So really not letting myself stall out just because everything didn't happen the way I tried to create it with my mind, right?
Yeah, that makes me
Trusting.
think of law of polarity, right? You think you want more people in your business, but then sometimes it's like, well, the universe is like, yeah, but you really need this magical trip in Florida with your family. So we're gonna have that happen. But so in order to do that though, trust is a huge part of it, that you trust, because you don't see like the beginning to the end, you just see the next step along the way in the journey. So you always have to keep coming back to trusting the process and trusting that the universe, if you are on path or whatever, don't think of on path, whatever that works. If you're on the right path going where you're supposed to be going and what's best for you and for everybody else, then the universe is going to tell you what you need. And you're right, it might look different than what you think.
Well, you were saying on path. I think of it as if you're in flow, right?
Or inflow, you could use
Right.
that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that expression. And honestly, that's what I'm really trying to do, is stay in flow and trust that. the universe has plans for me that I can't begin to imagine. Right.
Yeah.
And my incarnation cross is left angle cross of uncertainty. So I am here to be like just really present in the uncertainty and to trust that I'm supported, to know that whatever I have will be exactly what I need in that moment, but also to help other people know the same thing and feel that in their life. And that's been really a magical thing to help people see that what they see as the thing they have to fight against is what they need to, kind of go with the flow of and not stop resisting.
Yeah.
So
So, okay. So when you're working with clients, how does that look? Like what does mentoring with you look like?
that's really different every time. I call what I do an intuitive human design session because I've gotten to where I really trust that I'm going to know where to look. So generally, I will look at a chart ahead of time and oftentimes think I'm going to talk about something with a client and then we'll get in the session and they'll say something and I'll just say, well, let's look here. And many people try to start with a very structured, like, okay, let me teach you about your strategy and your authority and not talk about anything. And now I'll talk about how your profile lines work. And I do that to a certain degree, but I really, you know, have learned to trust that I'm going to be honed in on what you need to know. I had a client who we did a reading yesterday, and the main thing we talked about was a particular gate on her open solar plexus. And when we talked about it, what it was, it really spoke to everything she's been struggling with. But if you have a hanging gate on an open center, that's the filter that you experience all that energy through. So when we talked about that, it made so much sense. Now she had some knowledge of human design, so I wouldn't just start talking about that if someone didn't know their strategy or authority, but she was
Right.
still very new to it, but she'd heard all of that other stuff already, is what I'm saying. So it
Well,
really,
let me just say for the audience, we haven't talked a whole lot about hanging gates or
okay,
all the channels or any of that stuff. So I
yeah,
don't want anyone out there freaking out that they need to know about that to take advantage of what they're learning in this
right,
session. There,
yeah,
that's the walking
yeah.
encyclopedia, or which
But
is
sometimes
amazing.
that's sometimes
Well,
really
right, I understand
important.
what you're saying
Right,
in a
yeah,
session, but I'm
right,
just saying because the audience isn't familiar with all that
yeah,
stuff. So I was just like pointing
okay.
that out. So
So
you
generally,
trust your intuition in a
yes,
session
but
and
generally, if someone works with me, they either sign up for a month of sessions that can be renewed monthly, or there's a little discount if you sign up for 3 months of sessions. And so usually a person will have an idea of what they want to talk about going into it. They might know nothing and want to just start out with basic foundations. But a lot of times they're struggling with something in their life. And most people come to human design because they're looking for a tool to help them kind of reclaim their power or claim it for the first place and deal with getting rid of what's holding them back from being who they know they in their heart they came here to be. So we usually will talk about what's holding them back as far as in their life, the mental story that they're telling. And then we'll usually talk first about what it means to be whatever their energy type is and how that type is designed to um, respond to things in life. And so that's really important to know whether you're meant to, like this one woman I was talking to, she's a manifester. She's here to, her whole energy presence is to move humanity to a better place, right? It's this powerful energy that's meant to push things. And if you pull back and try to stay small, when you have this big, huge aura that's meant to move humanity to a better consciousness, basically, it just doesn't work. It implodes. So we talk about your strategy and authority, but I really, really try to help people rewrite their narrative in a way that does not take away their power. So many people have given away their power to their jobs, their family, their children, their community. And that doesn't mean you don't care about those things anymore, but you don't give away your power. We all have to keep our power.
Yeah. And I appreciate, like, we do have to rewrite our narrative
Mhm.
most often when we haven't done any work because we can usually be pretty crappy to ourselves and that voice in
Mhm.
our head. And I also want to point out for the people who are like listening, who not everybody is into human design or not. Human design is just a language for explaining how to rewrite your narrative. It's a strategy or a tool or a way of framing it so that you can do that. It's not the only way, but for me, it was by far the most effective way for me to really truly understand myself and figure out like why I was here and to really be able to start making decisions in a solid way that I totally trust and don't even question anymore. So I think it's pretty amazing.
And I will say, if people don't know what their type is or their chart, they can get their chart at my website. So I'm assuming we can link that somewhere.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we'll put a
Yeah,
link for
because
that and for
I have a
working
free
with you.
chart generator on there. So
All right, cool. So
okay.
what about we were also talking about your mentoring, but one of the things, and not everybody does this, and I think a lot of people think I think this is something that you could also get into your head about sometimes when you start doing the relational part of what you like to do with the work. So why don't you talk about that a little bit?
So I'm in a lot of different human design Facebook groups, and in the relationship ones, I am always going in there saying stop, because people are always like, am I compatible with this person? Because they're putting up the two charts. Okay. And our charts are not meant to tell us who we're meant to be with or who we're meant to work with. They just tell us how our energy interacts. And so when I talk to people about relationship, it's all about, you've got to know who you are. What's your energy? What's you? What's not you? And then you can know what is your partner or the person you want to be your partner when you're looking at their chart, and you can know what's them in a way that you don't try to get them to change to be like you. When you look at their design and you say, okay, I want them to honor me and this is who I am, and I can see where this energy here is this way, but yet I'm trying to get them to be this way. It's really, it becomes a no-brainer, that you can't do that. And also it takes away the mind story when you say, oh, look at this. They have this energy, and I'm going to talk gates for a minute. This energy of this gate, and I have the energy of this whole channel that overrides theirs. And no wonder they're always feeling like I'm bullying them about this. I'm not doing anything. And when you can see that it's the energy is making them feel a certain way and their body responds a certain way because of what they feel, you don't take it personally, because you can say, oh, okay, I'm just still meant to be me. And they're going to feel this way because this is something they're meant to learn on their journey. And I'm not supposed to change who I am because of it. And I'm not supposed to get upset when they say something about it. I'm just supposed to be constant in my energy of who I am, from a loving and accepting place of who they are. And it can really doesn't mean you put up with any kind of, horrible stuff from people. Don't get me
Right.
wrong. Yeah, but you know what I'm saying. Like, I used to get so annoyed at my husband for his unaccepting of my open mind to all kinds of woo-woo stuff. And you look at his chart, and the dude is so logical. It's not even like there's no doubt. It's like this is who he is. And he's a 5-1. So he's here to have all the facts. Give me the foundation of learning, right? And and so how can I get annoyed at him because he doesn't, care about certain things? And then, when you learn how the different types interact, it's been so nice for me as a projector to understand what it when he feels a certain way, it's because his sacral response has said no, and he can't do anything with that with his mind. I can just try to, open up his sacral again with giving him something to say yes to. So it makes you not take the energy personally when you can start to understand how things interact. So that's been really really healing, and honestly more so than in, not even so much in romantic relationships, but I have so many clients who have been able to make big progress on wounds with their parents, like stuff where they still feel like whenever I'm around my mom, this is what she does, and this is what, and then when you look at it in the chart and they're like, oh, now I see, and that doesn't mean
Yeah.
that they're handling it correctly, but when you can see that this is not that the story your mind has made up for what's going on is not really accurate.
No. And even if you look at it from a different, like Terrence Rowe with the adaptive child self, because the
Uh-huh.
adaptive child self too, we take it personally when our partner is doing something that they learned a skill a long time ago that
Yeah.
worked at one point in their lives. And we look at that as if that's truly them, but it's really just their adaptive child self. So, and then when you look at the energy piece of it, like what I know in relationships now is I can feel the energy of the other person.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty evident to me whether the energy for me being a 2-4 splitting projector is a yay or an A pretty early, but I don't know if it's like that for all the people in human design, if they're able to feel that right away, or if it's because of my gate that, the gates that I have open or defined. Would you like, is that something that everyone experiences? Do you think the energy in their body, the feeling?
I think everybody has a gift of intuition that has different ways of manifesting for each of us. But we have all, through many adaptive behaviors, suppressed a lot of that because either we were treated like we were weird, we were told that it didn't make sense, whatever the life experiences. Plus, I'm a firm believer that we bring stuff from past lives and things like that in that taught us that, if you are somebody who believes in past lives, which I certainly do, if you're somebody who, was thrown into the water to prove whether or not you're a witch, with a rock tied to you or something, you might not be as likely to be as comfortable with your abilities, right? So I think we all have gifts. They manifest in different ways. And the human design chart is a really great place to help you see where you might be blocked in expressing them. And as I have started to really trust my body, I keep getting more and more confident in my intuition. Like I used to think I had a memory problem, and I still have to watch myself for not referring to it as a memory problem. But what I've realized is that I have this big open ajna that's connected to all the things I've been exposed to. And if I can't pull it out of there, it's because it's not what I need to be talking about, or it's not important. So I'm supposed to just let it go. And I trust that I'll know what I need to know when I need to know it. And that has been life changing for me because that was part of my whole, like, I'm going to prove that I know this with human design. I would feel inferior because I would want to talk to somebody about the energy of a gate and I couldn't remember the name of the gate. And I'd get so hung up on that means there's something wrong with my brain. How am I going to ever do this? And I'd make a whole story about what all that not being able to remember meant about how doomed I was and how I was going to wind up alone in a nursing home, with no money. And, you make these stories up because, oh my gosh, especially I have a mother and my mother and my grandmother on my mom's side, both had dementia in late stages of their life. So, we create these stories, but I now trust that I will know in the moment what I need to know. And it's been like just rapidly, exponentially increasing to the point where I'm like, this can't really be real. How did I know that? I'll say something. I said stuff in a reading today to a guy, and I was like thinking, all right, he's going to think I'm just making this up. And he literally started to cry, like in a good way. He was like, oh my God, that's exactly what the universe has been telling me. And he was like, and I just, because as you trust your intuition and listen to it, it's like any kind of a muscle, right? You develop it the more you do it. And if we're not, the main thing is it starts with following your strategy and your authority, which sounds like a broken record in human design. But if you're not honoring your body enough to do the basics, and every time we use our strategy and authority correctly, we calibrate the part that's called the magnetic monopole, which is in human design, lives in our identity center, and it's what attracts everything in life to us. So if we're not responding correctly to what life is bringing us, we're calibrating ourselves in a direction that we are not meant to go. So we came here to live a certain, the design side tells us this is the vehicle with our life history and all this stuff. This is our life's work for this lifetime. And the black side says this is our soul's journey. This is how our soul's going to evolve and impact the world on this side. So if you're not using those things in the way that you planned to do it when you chose to come to this incarnation, then you're choosing the wrong, it's like a choose your own adventure story. If you choose the wrong one, you're going to have a completely different ending. So the more you start using your strategy and authority and operating correctly, the more you're going to find yourself in the right places with the right people and the right experiences. And they might not be anything your mind thinks of. So.
Yeah. Well, I love all that. I love everything that you said there. Wondering if you had to say I know this is really hard to do because I was just sitting here thinking like if I could even do it, but what it sounds like trusting your intuition is one of the greatest gifts that you've gotten from human design, and also knowing that you don't need to know everything right away or have clarity. What else would you say, do you think has helped you so much on a daily basis?
I am exactly where I need to be. I'm exactly who I'm meant to be. And I am perfect however I am at this particular moment, because it is the next step on the journey to where I'm meant to go. And so when I was able to stop beating myself up for anything that wasn't the way I thought it was supposed to be, it was just so empowering and liberating. So yeah, just the way that I have been able to unapologetically love myself in a way that has nothing to prove has been the most dramatic.
Yeah. And it's so meeting yourself where you are, not where you think you're
Yes.
supposed to be. As soon as that happens, and that means embracing the good, the bad, and the ugly, and loving every single part of yourself.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's pretty huge too.
Yep.
Well, is there anything else that you want to share with the audience that you haven't already said?
Um, you know me, I'm chatty Cathy, right? So I could go on for hours, but I just really want to emphasize that your journey is yours to control or not control, yours to embark
Experiment
on
with.
in
Yeah.
what an experiment with. It's called an experiment because you see what works and you see what doesn't work. But I will just offer one gentle suggestion. If people choose to go on this experiment on their own and just like read stuff and listen to stuff, anytime you find somebody who uses human design to tell you that there are rules or to limit yourself, just run the other way, because that's not how it works. Human design is all about learning to trust yourself. And sometimes as a projector, I learned to trust myself by not waiting for the invitation and then reflecting on, oh, that didn't work. Right. So we're not meant to always be perfect. And
Right.
so when you have these people who say, no, 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 are you radically doing this? Or are you blah, blah, blah? Or this is what you're meant to, and don't do this. It's just so blah. And life is meant to be fun. Right.
Yep. Yep. I like that too. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I think you're going to be a great resource for the audience should they be interested in getting a reading or mentoring from you. We'll put all your stuff in the show notes. And it was fun talking with you, and with all your knowledge you were able to share. I think what was really helpful today, and some things that the audience doesn't yet know about. And maybe you can come back and speak to some of those things like hanging gates and channels and that kind of stuff.
I would love that whenever it feels correct.
All right, audience, I know you learned something valuable here today. I'll see you next episode. Thanks for being here and learning about Brain BS. I hope you enjoyed listening to the episode as much as I enjoyed creating it for you. If you did, please take a little time to do a quick review, give me 5 stars, and share it with everyone you know. If you're actually interested in being on the podcast yourself or have questions about it, you can find me in the Brain BS podcast community on Facebook. See you next time.